On this week's parasha, asked the following kasha. And they ask, why is it that the Torah mentions Dafka Bris Milah in the same parasha that discusses childbirth? Again, what's the necessity that the Torah mentions it again? So there's a famous Gemara in Nidal Amad Aleph from base. The Gemara tells us, Kedei shelo ya'oviv v'ima etzevim v'aykol tzmeichem, says the Gemara, because we don't want a situation that a woman Kiyadua after labor, after she gives birth, she's tummy. And when she's tummy, there's a bit of tinge of sadness going on. And because you have a tinge of sadness, to make a simcha at that time, to make a bris milah as man simcha, it's missing something. Rather, we wait 8 days, we wait a certain amount of time, specifically, so that she becomes daraisa, whatever, tahor. And once she's Torah, now there's a real emistik simcha. It's the first lesson we learn from that, especially bizmanim ha'ela, shlo nagu kovid zeh lazeh, this man that Talmidei Rabbi Kiva were nifta, this man of v'shtikal ha'avelis, hanhogas ha'avelis that we keep. Ben adam lechaveiroi, to make a simcha when somebody else is not feeling it, it's not a emistik simcha. Simcha means that everyone can be involved, that everyone's excited, that everyone's in it. But maybe the Torah wanted us to wait that everyone's in the same situation. But there's perhaps another mahalach also, that the Medrash tells us, the Yalkut Shimoni brings down, that he says the reason that we wait, and that's why the Torah puts them together, to teach us to wait, is because we need that to be a Shabbos Kodesh. There needs to be a Shabbos Kodesh in between, so that this child, according to many, that's why you have Shalom Zacha. We want a child to experience a Shabbos Kodesh. That's the koyach of a Shabbos Kodesh. So I think that it's a very nogeya hakdama to talk about when we could say Shechiyonu v'kimonu v'giyonu lazman hazeh. It's been about 11 years since I opened up a kollel, and I had a kollel for a number of years. A lot has gone on since then. And the idea of having an olam learn Hilchas Shabbos specifically from the Gemaras, so we understand the Makoros, we understand where everything comes from. With the Rishonim, the Achronim, bit of the Lomdus, to understand where things are, and then moving to Halacha L'Maisa. As the Gemara tells us in so many places, Kedushin Daf Mem, Talmid Mevi L'Dei Maisa. The purpose of learning is in order to do Maisa. So that's what we're planning, Be'ezus Hashem Yisparach, to do, is to have, Baruch Hashem, tremendous siyata d'shmaya, shvach b'dot to the Rabbeinu Shalom, that we have such a siyata d'shmaya, to have such an incredible olam. And I want to thank, and use this opportunity to thank Harav Shnek Shlita for all this incredible avodah, his work over the last few weeks in receiving the phone calls and the scheduling of the meetings and backwards and forwards to get the olam here. Incredible Mesiras Nefesh. We have an incredible olam that are interested in learning not just Halacha L'Maisa, but understanding where it comes from, but making sure we get to Halacha L'Maisa. And that's really what we're going to try to be doing. But as Hashem, there's going to be Maram Koimis. These are the Maram Koimis that I made for my previous kollel, that are specifically targeted for an olam that want to understand from the Gemara till Halacha L'Maisa. There are, if you will see them, there's square brackets. The square brackets are made for those that want to go more be'in, or maybe more see the practical tshuvas, the halacha l'maisa, based on the things that we're learning. It's sif by sif. The Gemara that we're learning is based on each individual sif as well. And hopefully, be'ezus Hashem b'siyata d'shmaya, that we'll have a share at least once a week, that we'll be able to be mesaken what we've learnt. And the ikar is to come to halacha l'maisa, which not always can you find in Mishnah Berurah. We chose specifically the halachas of Refuah, Shin Chov Ches, Shin Chov Tes. Maybe we'll get the Shin Lamed, Yoledes also. Very, very practical halachas. Very, very negaya. I will say it's not so be'ian, but maybe that's also a good idea to start this month, start the beginning with something that's not incredibly be'ian. Each sif is almost on its own sugya. So if a person doesn't cut one thing, he gets to the next thing, it still works. It's not like one thing is a hemshech, it's all idea of Refuah, but everything can be learned separately. So that's the basic idea. Rav Shnek is going to be here the whole time for the olam. I'm going to try to make sure that I can be here as much as I can, which is, by the way, in case you didn't realize why we're having it in this building, so it gives me a bit more exercise. I can run up and down the stairs to see what the matzav is upstairs and downstairs. Be'ezah Hashem, b'siyat d'shmaya, we should be zoicha to come to Aliba de Hilchas. I just wanted to start just a few minutes with a little bit of a hagdama to understand. I don't want to go too much into it because the olam are going to learn on their own, then I'm going to see it on their own. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But I just want to start a little bit of hagdama. Refuah on Shabbos. What is refuah? Where does it come from? What's it negated to? So we all know Avada refuah is it's a durabonon. It's a durabonon that comes, Makor is Avada, the Melach of Toichin. It's a gzeira, what we call Shkika Samamonim, that a person, if he will do refuah on Shabbos, may get to do Toichin. Toichin being an Av Malacha. It's one of the Malachas of the Lamates Malachas, and it's a Daraisa, and it's too crushing. And since most refuahs were done through crushing, Mimele they asked all refuah on Shabbos Kodesh. So you may ask the Kasha, you may say, why are we choshish nowadays? The Maisa, we don't do these things. Most people don't have crushing, techniques or ways of crushing materials or foods in order to do refuah, in order to make medication. So what's it negeya to us? Why is this whole malacha negeya? So be'etzem the Rambam asks the kasha. The Ravid talks about it also, asks a kasha on this Rambam. And the Rambam says a very simple answer, which is a l'shitosai many times, that the Rambam says, once we have a gzeira, you need, as the Gemara tells us also, you need a based in Gadol Maminyan of B'chachma to be Mavatal, the original gzeira. So once we have a gzeira, even if the reason for the gzeira is gone, it's not negay, you can't Mavatal it. The gzeira remains in place. There's also a famous Vilna Gaon in Hilchos Bris Milah that says another reason is that the Chazal told us one reason, but the Meister there are many other reasons as well that not necessarily did they tell us that are still negaya. The Ktsoisa Shulchan Reb Chaim Nor brings another pshat. He says that since in certain places they do crushing, right? I remember when I first gave shir on this, maybe this was 14, 15 years ago on Refuah, specifically in a certain yeshiva. So I said, it's not negay, we don't do it. What's the point? So a guy comes over to me, says, what do you mean? My father has a shtickle pharmacy in his home. He has a room, and he has all sorts of, contraptions and equipments that allow him to crush, whether it's pills that are pre-made, which you can tie or maybe it's, herbs and things like that he taka crushes and extracts things from the item, whatever it is. So Chaim Noah writes in Shulchan Lemaisa, since there are people that do it, and that's how we receive most of our medication, that's the reason why it's still asa. And there's also a tshuva that Tzitz Eliezer. The Tzitz Eliezer in Chelek Ches has a tshuva, and he says it's shaykh to other malachos. We know, for example, refuah doesn't only apply to taking a medication in your mouth, it could also be a cream. Now a cream could also be negeya to mamachik, mamreach, in which the case of the Tzitz Eliezer, that's the reason why it's also, even if the actual gzeira shrika samamonim might not be negeya l'chalechod v'yechod, but since at the end of the day it's negeya and shaykh to other malachas, that's the reason why it remains in place. One of the other questions that the olam ask is, anyone that learned Hilchos Toichin, which is a Gvaldige Malacha, maybe Be'ez Hashem will get to it, is the Rashba. The Rashba is a famous sheet in Hilchos Toichin, that the Rashba says that any Toichin that's for miyad is mutter. There's no issa. Get the Mishabura Be'etzim is a bit machmed, I'll be the Beis Yosef, I'll become a Rishonim. But the Rashba holds that any toichin, any crushing that is done for miyad, for immediate usage, there's no issa of toichin. So they ask the kasha, lefi the shitas Rashba, if I'm taking medication miyad right now, so if on the doraisa level it's going to be mutter lefi shitas Rashba, so why would we be more machme by the Rabbanon? Akaponim, it's a Rabbanon, so then why would we be more machme? So the Prima Godim Be'etzem asked the kasha. Maybe you'll see it, Mishpah Zov Sikot Yud. The Prima Godim brings this kasha, he brings this famous Rashba. He goes a little bit more barichas than I'm saying, but the Prima Godim says in a nutshell that the heta of the Rashba is only by food purposes. When you are eating, not when you do it with food. When you are eating, that is the heta of the Rashba. Over here, it's not considered to be derech achila, which is also an interesting noise. So we know that from Hilchos Pesach as well. Whether we say achshavei, we don't say achshavei. Is there a problem on Pesach having medication that has chometz ingredients inside it? Is that called derech achila? Is it not called derech achila? Pashtus, it's not derech achila. Memelev is not derech achila. That's the reason, says the Prima Godim, why you don't have the heta of the Rashba, which Tamazo anyway, the Mishabura is Lamaisa Machme over there. So let me just end with one last thing, just the Issa of Refuah applies, as we said, not only to taking medication, but any type of Refuah internally and externally as well. And maybe we'll leave the oilim with the kasha. My Rosh Yeshiva, Reb Chaim Pinchas Steinberg Zatzal, always used to tell us, when he used to give us share, he always used to say, when you're learning something, leave yourself with a kasha. And he said, when you're walking home or you're munching on the schnitzel, you have something to think about. So I leave the oilim with this kasha. And the question is like this: what exactly is the Hagdoras HaIssa when it comes to the Issa of Refuah? What is the Hagdoras HaIssa? Is it when they do the Maisa of Refuah? That's when Chazal were geyser. Or is it when a person gets healed? That's the Issa. My nafkamina. Of course, the nafkamina would be, for example, imagine a woman, she lit candles, so she's Makabel Shabbos Kodesh, and now she realizes, oh, I forgot to put a cream on the outside of my hand because I've got some problem with skin condition, and the doctor said I've got to put cream twice a day, whatever it may be. Leaving out the shaila of mamreach, mamachek, smoothing, we're not going into that. But the shaila is, can she ask her husband to put on that? Now, we're not going into Hilchas Kabbalah Shabbos, whether a person's allowed to ask someone to malacha for them, we're not going into all those sugyas right now. Als Hilchas Refuah, can a husband put the medication on her? Do we say the Issa is when you would do the Maisa, which means she's not doing the Maisa? Okay, you want to say Messiah Sheyesh Boi Mamas, Messiah She'ein Boi Mamas, right? The Taz talks about it in Yodei Simon Kupay Aleph, whether or not the Gabi Hilchas Hakats. For those of you that are learning Daf Yomi, we just had it in Makkah just recently. Chaf Aleph talks about Messiah She'ein Boi Mamas, Sheyesh Boi Mamas, by the Pe'es HaRosh. Al Kaponim, maybe sticking out a hand is considered to be Messiah Sheyesh Boi Mamas. Whatever it may be, that's the kasha. That's the kasha that they are. So in Svar Megdoshim, there's the Sefer Shabbos. He brings down in Simon Kuf Yadalit, he brings down one of these kashas, and he says, what happens if a person wants to take a pill on Shabbos, where the toilet of the pill is only going to work on Motzei Shabbos? Is there an Issa or is there not an Issa? Mitzad I'm taking the pill on Shabbos. Mitzad Sheni, the toilet of the pill is Motzei Shabbos. So he brings the Radvaz. The Radvaz wants to say, and the Radvaz brings a Rambam that says that somebody that drinks something that makes him go to the bathroom all the time is Chaim Mishum Mitztar on Shabbos. You're not allowed to do that. You can put yourself in the situation where you're Mitztar on Shabbos. That's why Paskin the Maisa, the Rambam, the Ravid brings, that the Radvaz brings over there. The question is, what about Refuah? He's taking a pill. What about the etzim before that he's doing? So he explains that since the act of going to the bathroom only happens on Motzei Shabbos, meaning the toilet of the pill only happens on Motzei Shabbos, so that's the case, there's no problem in there over there. So if that's the case over here, you want to say the same thing over here, which means if the makar of the refuah is only happening when you take the pill on Shabbos, but the refuah is happening on Motzei Shabbos, there should be'etzem be no issa bechlal, because at the end of the day, that's what happens when you take the refuah. The refuah happens on Motzei Shabbos. There's no issa bechlal. Now, by the way, by Hilchos Bishul, we find a similar idea also. By Hilchos Bishul, we find the kasha that the Mefoshim ask is when they put a pot on the fire, so it doesn't cook straight away, it takes time. So the shayla is that considered to be a groma, or is that by Maisa or not? The Mishnah Berurah in Hilchos Bishul, the Maisa, learns different pshat in the Rambam. He learns it's all by your kavana, b'shas Maisa. Not when the toilet happens, but rather what you are doing when you do it, and what your kavana is at that time over there. Which means, according to the Mishnah Berurah, at least in Hilchos Bishul, which you could taina, and feed the Rashash, and the Eglei Tal Machoikas about how you learn, the Yisod and Bishul, whether or not it's your Maisa or it's when it happens. According to this Mishnah Berurah, it's your Maisa that is what we're dealing with, which means if the Maisa is the Maisa Refuah and the husband hasn't yet been Makabel Shabbos, there's a Mokum to be Mekel over there. In fact, there's a Tshuva in the Belz of Dayan and the Shevet Kahasi. He brings down the Chelik Aleph Simukov Zayin. He brings down that the woman lit candles and now the husband wants to put on cream. He Lamaisa is Machmeh. I'm not really sure why he's Machmeh, because I don't understand why it's different to anyone that's Makabel Shabbos, that's allowed to ask anyone that's not Makabel Shabbos to do any malacha. It's betzim off in the Shulchan Aruch. I don't know why Shevet Takasi Paskins Lahachmi. It's also Gzeira, whatever it is. But something to think about in the sugya of what is the Agdara Se'issa. Maybe we'll get to it at a different time. And Be'ez Hashem, we're going to try B'siyat Shmai. Once the Olam are into it a little bit more, and we've gone through a few of the Seifim, we'll try to be Mesakin Be'ez Hashem next time. Some of the Seifim, a little bit of Lomdes, a little bit of Halacha Lamaisa, B'siyat Shmai. When I wish everyone Be'ez Hashem a lot of Atzlacha in the Sugya.